The morning lights of Nexus Station flickered on as thousands of beings from across the galaxy began their daily business. Ships of every size and shape docked at the massive space station. Some were sleek vessels from the core worlds. Others were rough cargo haulers from the outer rim. The air hummed with the sounds of 100 different languages as aliens traded, negotiated, and conducted their affairs. Hana walked slowly through the main corridor, her worn shoes making soft sounds on the metal floor. Her gray hair was tied back in a simple knot, and her clothes were clean but old. She carried a small fabric bag that looked like it had seen many years of use. Other beings barely noticed her as they hurried past, focused on their own important business. She stopped in front of a large store window that gleamed with bright lights. Inside, the most amazing alien technology was displayed on floating platforms. Communication devices that could reach across star systems, translators that worked with any language, and data tablets that could store the knowledge of entire worlds. Everything looked expensive and new. The store's name was written in elegant letters above the door, Veltar's Premium Technologies. Through the glass, Hana could see tall display cases filled with devices she had never seen before. A small sign near the entrance said the store served distinguished clients only. Hana took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy door. A soft chime announced her arrival. The inside of the store was even more impressive than the window display. The floors were made of polished stone that reflected the lights above. Holographic advertisements floated in the air, showing how the various devices worked. Behind the main counter stood Veltar, a Zentari merchant who was nearly 8 feet tall. His purple skin had silver markings that showed his high status among his people. He wore expensive robes that sparkled with tiny gems. His forearms moved gracefully as he arranged items on the counter. When he heard the door chime, he looked up with interest, expecting to see a wealthy customer. Instead, his large eyes focused on Hana. His expression changed immediately from welcoming to annoyed. He looked her up and down, taking in her simple clothes and old bag. His mouth, which had been ready to smile, turned into a frown. "Excuse me," Hana said quietly in broken galactic standard. "I am looking for communication device. To speak with family far away." Veltar's assistant, a small insect-like being named Crix, scuttled over on 6 legs. Crix had been organizing inventory in the back of the store, but came forward when he heard voices. His compound eyes looked at Hana with the same unfriendly expression as his boss. "Sir," Crix clicked in his high-pitched voice. "Should I escort this person outside?" Veltar held up one of his hands to stop his assistant. He wanted to handle this himself. "Tell me, human," he said, his voice loud enough for other customers to hear. "Do you have any idea how much the items in this store cost?" Hana reached into her bag and pulled out a small pouch. "I have been saving money for a long time. Very important to speak with children and grandchildren." The Zentari merchant laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the store. "Saving? Human. The cheapest communication device in my store costs more than you probably make in 5 years." Other customers in the store began to pay attention. A group of wealthy Altarians near the energy weapons display turned to watch. 2 Corvin traders by the navigation equipment stopped their conversation to listen. Even a single Vex diplomat browsing the luxury items looked over with interest. "Please," Hana said, her voice getting smaller. "I only need basic model, just to hear voices of family." Veltar moved around the counter, all forearms gesturing dramatically. "Basic model? Do you see where you are? This is not a bargain shop for poor humans. This is a premium establishment for beings of quality and wealth." Crix clicked his approval. "The human clearly does not understand her place, sir." "Exactly right, Crix." Veltar's voice got louder. "You see, human, there is an order to things in this galaxy. Some beings are meant for fine establishments like mine. Others," he looked at her worn clothes again, "others should shop at the discount stores in the lower levels." Hana's face grew red with embarrassment. The other customers were now openly staring and whispering among themselves. A few of the Altarians made clicking sounds that might have been laughter. "I have credits," Hana insisted, holding up her small pouch again. "Real credits. I work hard for many years." "Credits?" Veltar took the pouch from her hands before she could stop him. He opened it and looked inside, then held it up for his assistant to see. "Crix, look at this. She has maybe, 50 credits? 60? The cheapest item in our store costs 800 credits, sir," Crix announced loudly. 800 credits, Veltar repeated, making sure everyone could hear. And this poor human brings 50 credits and expects to buy our finest technology. He handed the pouch back to her with obvious disgust. One of the Corvan traders made a rumbling sound. That was their version of laughter. Humans, he said to his companion. They always think they deserve the same things as their betters. It is quite amusing, agreed the vexed diplomat. They have such unrealistic expectations. Hana's hands shook as she took back her pouch. Please, sir. Maybe you have older model? Something not so expensive? Older model? Veltar's voice dripped with fake concern. My dear human, this is a respectable business. We do not sell old broken equipment to anyone. Our reputation would suffer if word got out that we served customers like you. Crick scuttled closer to Hana. Perhaps the human would be more comfortable at one of the second-hand shops. They are more suitable for beings of limited means. An excellent suggestion, Crix. Veltar nodded. Human, I am going to do you a favor. I will not call station security to report that you are bothering legitimate customers, but you must leave now and do not come back. Hana looked around the store at all the watching faces. Every single being was looking at her with expressions ranging from amusement to disgust. No one seemed to think there was anything wrong with how she was being treated. I understand, she said quietly. I will go. See that you do, Veltar said. And please use the service corridors when you travel through this section of the station. Customers of quality should not have to see. He waved dismissively at her clothes. Hana walked slowly toward the door, her head down. Behind her, she could hear the other customers resuming their conversations, some still chuckling about the poor human who thought she belonged in such an upscale store. As the door closed behind her with a soft chime, Veltar smiled with satisfaction. Well, he announced to his remaining customers, I apologize for that unpleasant interruption. Now how may I assist you distinguished beings today? Outside the store, Hana stood still for a moment, clutching her small bag. The busy corridor of Nexus Station continued around her, but she felt very alone among all the alien beings hurrying past with their important business. Dongyun had been preparing vegetables for the lunch rush when he heard the loud voices coming from Veltar's store. His small food stall was located just across the corridor from the expensive technology shop, so he could see everything that happened through the large windows. He watched as the tall Zentari merchant waved his arms and spoke in a voice loud enough for half the corridor to hear. The old human woman stood there with her head down, clearly embarrassed by all the attention. Other alien customers in the store were laughing and pointing at her. Dongyun's hand stopped moving as he watched the scene. He had been cutting onions for his famous stir-fry, but now he could only stare as the woman was pushed toward the door. His heart felt heavy as he saw how the other beings treated her. When Hana finally came out of the store, Dongyun could see tears in her eyes. She stood there for a moment, looking lost and confused. The busy aliens walking past her did not stop to ask if she was okay. They just kept moving, focused on their own business. Dongyun wiped his hands on his apron and stepped out from behind his counter. His food stall was nothing fancy, just a simple setup with a cooking area and a few small tables. The sign above it read Dongyun's Kitchen in Korean and Galactic Standard. He had painted it himself when he first opened the stall 3 years ago. Excuse me, he called out in Korean, then switched to Galactic Standard when he realized she might not understand. Are you okay? Hana looked up, surprised that anyone was talking to her. She saw a young human man with kind eyes and a friendly smile. He was wearing a simple apron over his clothes, and his hands smelled like cooking spices. I am fine, she said quietly, though her voice shook a little. You do not look fine, Dongyun said gently. Would you like to sit down? I have a chair here. He pointed to one of the small tables beside his stall. It was not much, just a basic metal table and chair, but it was clean and comfortable. Hana looked at it like it was the most wonderful thing she had ever seen. I do not want to bother you, she said. You are working. No bother at all, Dongyun smiled. Please sit. You look tired. Hana walked over to the chair and sat down carefully. She placed her small bag on her lap and looked around nervously. This was the first time anyone had been kind to her since she arrived at the station. Are you hungry? Dongyun asked. I was just making lunch. I have plenty of food. Oh no, Hana said quickly. I cannot pay for meal right now. I am saving my money for something important. Donghyun had heard enough of the argument in the store to understand what had happened. "Did I ask for money?" he said with a laugh. "I am offering you food as my guest." He went back to his cooking area and began preparing a plate. The smell of garlic and onions filled the air as he heated oil in his large pan. He added rice, vegetables, and strips of synthetic meat that tasted almost like the real thing. The sound of sizzling food made several passing aliens stop and look at his stall with interest. "This smells wonderful," said a Corvin trader who had been in Veltar's store earlier. "How much for a plate?" 15 credits, Donghyun answered while continuing to cook. "Fresh vegetables, good protein, and my grandmother's secret sauce." The Corvin handed over the credits and waited for his order. 2 more aliens joined the small line that was forming. Donghyun worked quickly, serving his customers while keeping one eye on Hana. When the small rush was over, he prepared a large plate of food and brought it to Hana's table. He also brought a cup of hot tea and a pair of chopsticks. "I told you I cannot pay," Hana said, looking worried. "And I told you this is my gift," Donghyun replied. "Please eat. You will feel better with food in your stomach." Hana picked up the chopsticks with shaking hands. The food was delicious, better than anything she had eaten in weeks. The vegetables were crisp, the rice was perfectly cooked, and the sauce had a wonderful blend of sweet and spicy flavors. "This is very good," she said after her first bite. "Oh, you are excellent cook." "Thank you," Donghyun said, sitting down across from her. "My grandmother taught me when I was young. She always said food tastes better when it is shared with friends." "Friends?" Hana looked surprised. "But you do not know me." "I know enough," Donghyun said. "I know you are far from home. I know you are trying to do something important with the little money you have. And I know those aliens in the store treated you badly because they thought you were not good enough for them." Hana stopped eating and looked at him with wide eyes. "You saw what happened?" "I saw everything," Donghyun said quietly. "It made me angry. No one should be treated like that, especially not an elder. In my culture, we respect our elders very much." As Hana ate, she began to tell Donghyun her story. She explained that her children and grandchildren were scattered across different colonies throughout the galaxy. Some were on mining worlds in the outer rim. Others had found work on agricultural planets near the core worlds. She had not spoken to any of them in over 2 years. "The communication costs are so expensive," she said sadly. "And I am just a cleaner on a cargo ship. I do not make much money, but I have been saving every credit for 3 years to buy a device that will let me talk to them." 3 years? Donghyun looked amazed. "You saved for 3 years?" "My family is everything to me," Hana said. "I have 12 grandchildren I have never met. My youngest daughter just had a baby. I see pictures they send, but I want to hear their voices. I want them to know I'm still alive and I love them." Donghyun felt his throat tighten with emotion. He thought about his own family back on Earth. He talked to them every week through his communication device. He could not imagine going years without hearing their voices. "How much more do you need to save?" he asked. "The cheapest device I found cost 400 credits, Hana said. "I have 62 credits now. Maybe in 2 more years I will have enough." 2 more years is too long," Donghyun said firmly. He stood up and walked over to his cash box. He counted out credits and came back to the table. "Here," he said, placing the money next to her plate. 340 credits. Now you can buy your communication device today." Hana stared at the credits like they were magic. "I cannot take this," she whispered. "This is too much. You do not even know me." "You are human," Donghyun said simply. "Humans take care of each other. This is what we do." "But this is probably all the money you made this week," Hana protested. "You need this for your business." "My business will be fine," Donghyun smiled. "But your family is waiting to hear your voice. That is more important than my profits." Tears ran down Hana's cheeks as she looked at the young man who had shown her such kindness. Around them, various alien species walked past, some stopping to watch this unusual scene of human generosity. A group of Vex diplomats paused near the table, speaking quietly among themselves in their own language. 2 Altarian merchants also stopped, their large eyes focused on the interaction between the 2 humans. "Why do you help her?" asked one of the Altarians in accented Galactic standard. "She cannot repay you." Donghyun looked up at the alien with a confused expression. "Why does she need to repay me? She is old, she is far from her family, and she needs help. That is reason enough." The aliens looked at each other with puzzled expressions, then continued on their way. This kind of behavior was strange to them. In their cultures, business was business and charity was something you did only for family members or political allies. But Hana understood perfectly. She reached across the table and took Donghyun's hand in both of hers. "Thank you," she said. "You have given me the greatest gift in the galaxy. You have given me back my family." 1 hour after Hana left to buy her communication device, the normal sounds of Nexus Station were interrupted by a deep rumbling that made the metal floors vibrate. Donghyun looked up from cleaning his cooking area to see what was causing the noise. Through the large windows that faced the docking bays, he could see a massive ship slowly moving into position. It was not like the usual cargo haulers or passenger transports that came to the station. This ship was enormous, with a hull that gleamed like polished silver. Golden decorations covered its sides, and the design was clearly meant to show wealth and power. Other beings in the corridor stopped their activities to watch the ship dock. Even the usually busy alien merchants paused their conversations to stare at the impressive vessel. Ships like this did not come to Nexus Station very often. Most of the time, they went to the fancy stations in the core worlds where the richest beings in the galaxy conducted their business. "Look at that ship," said a Zentari customer at Donghyun's stall. "That must belong to someone very important." "Very rich, anyway," added his companion, a small furry alien from the Rim worlds. "I have never seen so much gold on one ship." Donghyun served them their food and continued watching the docking process. The ship was so big that it took up 3 normal docking spaces. Station workers in their bright orange uniforms hurried around, making sure everything was secure. After the ship finished docking, nothing happened for several minutes. Then a large section of the hull opened like a flower, and a ramp extended down to the station floor. What came out next made everyone in the corridor stop and stare. First came 6 beings dressed in matching uniforms of deep blue with silver trim. They were from different species, but all carried themselves like trained guards. Behind them walked 4 more beings in elegant robes that sparkled with tiny gems. These were clearly people of high status and great wealth, but the most impressive figure was the one who came last. He was tall and thin, with pale green skin and long silver hair that floated behind him like he was underwater. His robes were pure white with gold thread woven in complex patterns. Around his neck hung a chain with a medallion that was bigger than Donghyun's hand. "That is a Galactic Commerce Guild official," whispered the Zentari customer, one of the highest ranks. "What is someone like that doing here?" The group of important beings walked through the corridor like they owned the entire station. Other aliens quickly moved out of their way, some even bowing as they passed. The guards looked around carefully as if they were protecting their employers from some danger. Donghyun watched with growing confusion as the group stopped in front of his simple food stall. The lead official, the one with the silver hair, stepped forward and looked directly at him. "Are you the human called Donghyun?" the official asked in perfect galactic standard. "Yes, sir," Donghyun answered, feeling suddenly nervous. "Is there a problem?" "No problem at all," the official said with a thin smile. "My name is Kalen Vorthak, Senior Trade Representative of the Galactic Commerce Guild. I am here to deliver something to you." Donghyun's confusion grew deeper. "Deliver something? But I did not order anything." One of the beings in sparkling robes stepped forward carrying a large case made of some kind of dark metal. The case was covered with symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. It was clearly made by someone with great skill and even greater wealth. "This is for you," Kalen said, gesturing to the case. "A gift from someone who wishes to remain unknown for now." "A gift?" Donghyun stared at the case. "But I do not understand. Who would send me a gift, and what is it?" "Perhaps it would be easier to show you," Kalen said. He nodded to the being holding the case, who placed it carefully on one of Donghyun's tables. By now, a crowd was gathering. Aliens from all over this section of the station had stopped their business to watch what was happening. Veltar had come out of his expensive store to see what the fuss was about. His assistant Crick scuttled beside him, both of them staring at the important visitors with wide eyes. "Go ahead," Kalen encouraged Donghyun. "Open it." Donghyun's hands shook slightly as he touched the case. The metal was warm and smooth like it was alive. As soon as his fingers made contact, the glowing symbols brightened and the case opened with a soft sound like music. Inside, nestled in material that looked like liquid starlight, was the most beautiful communication device Donghyun had ever seen. It was not just beautiful, it was clearly the most advanced model possible. The surface was made of something that shifted between silver and gold as the light hit it. Small crystals were embedded around the edges, and holographic displays showed technical information that was far beyond anything Dongyun understood. "This is a quantum communication array, Model X7, Kalen announced to the growing crowd. "The most advanced personal communication device in the known galaxy. It can reach any point in explored space instantly with perfect clarity. It can translate any known language automatically. It can store unlimited data, and it never needs charging because it draws power directly from quantum fluctuations in space itself." The crowd gasped. Even beings who knew nothing about technology could tell this was something extraordinary. Feltar pushed through the crowd to get a better look, his forearms waving with excitement. "That model costs..." "It costs..." Veltar's voice trailed off as he tried to calculate the value. "More than my entire store. More than my entire building." 50,000 credits, Kalen said calmly. "Plus the cost of having it custom-made, which adds another 20,000. 70,000 credits?" Donghyun felt dizzy. That was more money than he had ever seen in his entire life. That was enough to buy his own ship and travel anywhere in the galaxy. "But I cannot accept this," he said quickly. "There has been some mistake. I am just a food vendor. I do not know anyone who could afford such a gift." "There is no mistake," Kalen assured him. "The person who sent this knows exactly who you are and what you did today. They wanted to make sure you received something that matches the generosity you showed to others." "What I did today?" Dongyun looked around at all the watching faces. "I just shared food with an old lady. Anyone would do the same thing." Several aliens in the crowd made sounds that indicated disagreement. The idea of giving away money to a stranger was not something most of them would consider normal behavior. "Not everyone would do the same thing," Kalen said meaningfully. "In fact, very few beings would show such kindness to someone they had never met before. The person who sent this gift was very impressed by your actions." Veltar pushed closer to the table, his eyes fixed on the expensive device. "Surely there is some explanation," he said loudly. "How does a simple food vendor receive such an expensive gift? What kind of connections does he have?" "The kind of connections that matter most," Kalen replied without looking at the Zentari merchant. "Connections of character and kindness." The other guild officials began placing additional items on the table. There was a service contract that would provide free maintenance for the communication device for life. There was a credit chip that contained enough money to upgrade Dongyun's food stall into a proper restaurant. There was even a small holographic projector that would let him send and receive three-dimensional messages. "This is too much," Dongyun said, feeling overwhelmed. "I do not deserve all of this." "That is exactly why you deserve it," Kalen smiled. "The person who sent these gifts has been watching this station today. They have seen how different beings treat each other. They have seen kindness and cruelty, generosity and greed. Your action stood out like a bright star in a dark sky." "But who is this person?" Dongyun asked. "Why will they not tell me their name?" "All will be revealed in time," Kalen said mysteriously. "For now, please accept these gifts with the knowledge that they come from someone who values what you did more than you can possibly imagine." The guild officials began to pack up their ceremonial materials. Their job was clearly finished. As they prepared to leave, Kalen turned back to Dongyun one more time. "One more thing," he said. "The person who sent these gifts wanted me to tell you something. They said you should remember that small acts of kindness can change the entire galaxy." With that, the important beings walked away, their guards surrounding them as they headed back to their magnificent ship. The crowd slowly dispersed, but many aliens stayed nearby, talking quietly among themselves about what they had just witnessed. Dongyun stood alone beside his table, staring at the communication device that was worth more than everything he owned. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness would lead to something like this. All he had done was share food with a lonely old woman, but as he looked at the beautiful device gleaming in the station's lights, he began to wonder who had been watching him so carefully and why his kindness had mattered so much to them. 2 hours had passed since the guild officials left with their mysterious gifts. Dongyun was still trying to understand what had happened when he saw a familiar figure walking through the corridor toward his stall. It was Hana, but she looked completely different. Instead of her worn old clothes, she now wore an elegant dress made of deep blue fabric that seemed to shimmer as she moved. Her gray hair was no longer tied back in a simple knot, but arranged in a beautiful style that made her look decades younger. Expensive jewelry sparkled at her throat and wrists. Behind her walked a younger woman in a professional business suit. This woman moved with the confidence of someone who was used to being in charge. She carried a tablet computer and kept checking it as they walked. Several other beings followed at a respectful distance, clearly employees or assistants. Dong-hyun rubbed his eyes, thinking he might be seeing things. But when he looked again, it was definitely the same old woman he had shared lunch with earlier, except now she looked like one of the wealthy beings who usually shopped at the expensive stores in the upper levels of the station. "Hello again." "Dong-hyun," Hana said with a warm smile as she approached his stall. "Hana?" Dong-hyun stared at her in confusion. "Is that really you? What happened to your clothes? Where did you get that jewelry?" "These are my real clothes," Hana said gently. "The other outfit was just a disguise. My name is not really Hana either. My full name is Han Myung-ja, and I think we need to talk." The young woman beside her stepped forward. "Mr. Dong-hyun, I am Ji-won, personal assistant and head of security for Han Myung-ja. We would like to speak with you privately if that is possible." "Security?" Dong-hyun looked back and forth between the two women. "I do not understand what is happening here." "Please," Han Myung-ja said. "May we sit at your table? I will explain everything." Dong-hyun nodded and gestured to the chairs. As Han Myung-ja sat down, he noticed that several aliens in the corridor had recognized her. They were pointing and whispering among themselves. A few even took out recording devices to capture images. "You are famous," Dong-hyun observed. "People know who you are." "Yes," Han Myung-ja said with a slight smile. "They do. I own a company called Han Interstellar Shipping. Perhaps you have heard of it?" Dong-hyun's mouth fell open. Everyone in the galaxy had heard of Han Interstellar Shipping. It was one of the biggest transportation companies in known space. They moved cargo between thousands of worlds and employed millions of beings. The company's ships were seen in every system, carrying everything from food supplies to luxury goods. "You own Han Interstellar?" Dong-hyun could barely get the words out. "But that means you are..." "One of the richest humans in the galaxy," Han Myung-ja finished for him. "Yes, that is correct." Ji-won was watching the corridor carefully, making sure no one came too close to their conversation. She spoke quietly into a small communication device, probably calling for more security. "But why were you dressed like that?" Dong-hyun asked. "Why did you pretend to be poor?" "Because I wanted to see how people would treat me," Han Myung-ja explained. "I do this sometimes in different places throughout the galaxy. I dress like an ordinary person and observe how different beings behave towards someone they think has no money or power." "That was a test?" Dong-hyun felt confused and a little hurt. "You were testing me?" "Not just you," Han Myung-ja said quickly. "Everyone on this station. The store owners, the customers, the security guards, even the maintenance workers. I wanted to see who would show kindness to a stranger and who would show cruelty." She pointed toward Veltar's expensive store across the corridor. "That Zentari merchant failed my test completely. He was rude, insulting, and treated me badly because he thought I could not afford his products. He made me feel ashamed for even entering his store." Dong-hyun looked over at Veltar's shop and saw the tall alien watching them through his window. Even from this distance, Dong-hyun could see that Veltar looked worried and confused. "But you," Han Myung-ja continued, "you passed the test in the most beautiful way possible. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped without asking for anything in return. You gave me food when I was hungry. You gave me money when I needed it. You treated me with respect and kindness." "I just did what anyone should do," Dong-hyun said quietly. "That is where you are wrong," Ji-won interrupted. "We have been watching this station for 3 days. Mrs. Han has approached dozens of beings in different disguises. You are the only one who offered genuine help without expecting something back." "The only one?" Dong-hyun looked around at all the busy aliens in the corridor. "But there are so many beings here. Surely others would help too." "We documented every interaction," Ji-won said, checking her tablet. 47 different beings were approached in various scenarios. Most ignored Mrs. Han completely. 15 were openly rude or dismissive. 8 tried to take advantage of her apparent poverty by offering unfair deals. 5 called security to have her removed from their businesses. And 1, Han Myung-ja said with a smile, shared his food and his money with a stranger because it was the right thing to do. Dong-hyun felt overwhelmed by this information. "So you sent me those expensive gifts?" "I did," Han Myung-ja confirmed. "But they are not just gifts. They are also an investment." "Investment?" Jiwon stepped forward again. Mrs. Han would like to offer you a business partnership. She wants to help you expand your food operation throughout this sector of the galaxy. Expand? Donghyun stared at them. But I just have a small stall. I cook simple food for people who work on the station. Simple food made with love and served with kindness. Han Myongja corrected. Do you know how rare that is in the galaxy? Most food service establishments care only about profit, but you care about people. She gestured around the corridor. Look at this place. Thousands of beings pass through here every day. They are far from home, working hard jobs, dealing with stress and loneliness. They need more than just food. They need someone who treats them like they matter. I have been thinking about this for months, Han Myongja continued. My company ships food all over the galaxy, but we do not have any restaurants or food service operations. I want to change that, and I want you to help me build a chain of restaurants that serves good food with the same kindness you showed me today. Donghyun felt dizzy. This was all happening too fast. A few hours ago, he was worried about having enough credits to buy fresh vegetables for tomorrow's meals. Now one of the richest humans in the galaxy was offering him a business partnership. But why me? He asked. You could partner with anyone. Professional chefs, experienced business people, anyone you wanted. Because, Han Myongja said simply, you have something that cannot be taught in any school or bought with any amount of money. You have a good heart. As they talked, more aliens had gathered in the corridor. Word was spreading quickly that Han Myongja was on the station. Some were taking pictures, others were trying to get close enough to hear the conversation. Veltar had left his store and was walking toward them, his forearms waving nervously. His assistant Crick scuttled behind him, looking frightened. Excuse me, Veltar called out as he approached the table. Mrs. Han Myongja? I am Veltar, owner of the premium technology store. I believe there may have been some misunderstanding earlier today. Han Myongja looked up at him with cold eyes. No misunderstanding at all, Mr. Veltar. You made your feelings about poor humans very clear. But I had no idea who you were, Veltar protested. If I had known you were testing me, I would have behaved completely differently. Exactly, Han Myongja said. You would have treated me well only because of my money and power. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Veltar's purple skin turned a darker shade as he realized his mistake. Please, surely we can work something out. I am always willing to serve distinguished customers like yourself. You had your chance to serve me, Han Myongja replied. You chose to insult and humiliate me instead. Now you must live with the consequences of that choice. She turned back to Donghyun, dismissing Veltar completely. So what do you say? Would you like to help me bring a little more kindness to the galaxy? Donghyun looked at the expensive communication device sitting on his table, then at Han Myongja's sincere expression, then at all the aliens watching this incredible scene unfold. Yes, he said quietly. I would like that very much. 3 weeks later, Donghyun stood in the same corridor where his life had changed forever. But everything around him looked different now. Where his small food stall had been, there was now a proper restaurant with glass walls, comfortable seating, and a professional kitchen that gleamed with new equipment. The sign above the door read Donghyun's Kitchen, food made with heart, in 12 different languages. Already beings from all over the station were coming to eat there, drawn not just by the delicious food, but by the warm atmosphere that made everyone feel welcome. Han Myongja had kept her promise. The restaurant was just the first step in their plan to bring kindness and good food to beings throughout the galaxy. Construction had already begun on similar restaurants at 5 other space stations, and more locations were planned for the following year. Brother, you need to see this, called Sujin as she came out of the kitchen carrying a tablet. She was Donghyun's younger sister, who had arrived from Earth the week before to help manage the new business. Her eyes were bright with excitement as she showed him the screen. Look at these reviews, she said. Beings are not just talking about the food. Listen to this one from a Corvan trader. This is the first restaurant where the staff remembered my name after just one visit. The human owner asked about my family and seemed to genuinely care about my answer. Donghyun smiled as he read more of the comments. A vexed diplomat had written, I have eaten at the finest establishments in the core worlds, but I have never felt as welcome anywhere as I did at Donghyun's Kitchen. The owner treated me like an honored guest, not just a customer. And this one, Sujin continued, from an Altarian merchant. My daughter was crying because she was homesick. and the human cook made her a special meal that reminded her of home. He would not accept any payment for it. I do not understand this kind of generosity, but I am grateful for it. Through the restaurant's windows, Dong-hyun could see the empty storefront that had once housed Veltar's premium technologies. The expensive store had closed 2 weeks ago, after news of the Zentari merchants' behavior spread through the alien business networks. It had started small. Just a few customers mentioning to their friends that Veltar had treated Han Myung-ja badly when he thought she was poor. But the story grew as it was told and retold. Social media networks across dozens of alien species picked up the tale. Soon, beings everywhere were talking about the merchant who judged customers by their appearance rather than their character. "Did you hear what happened to Veltar?" Ji-won asked as she joined them at their table. Han Myung-ja's assistant had become a regular visitor to the restaurant, helping coordinate the expansion plans. "What now?" Dong-hyun asked, though he felt a little sorry for the proud Zentari. 3 more of his major suppliers canceled their contracts yesterday, Ji-won explained. Apparently, they do not want to be associated with someone who treats beings badly based on their appearance. His assistant Crix found a job at another store on the upper level. "And Veltar?" Soo-jin asked. "He is trying to sell his remaining inventory," Ji-won said. "But word has spread so far that even off-station buyers are staying away. Some are calling it the Nexus Station incident on the business networks." Dong-hyun shook his head sadly. "I do not feel good about this. Yes, he was rude and cruel, but maybe he has learned his lesson now. That is exactly why Mrs. Han chose you." Ji-won smiled. "Even after everything that happened, you still have compassion for beings who wronged you. That is very unusual." As if summoned by their conversation, Han Myung-ja entered the restaurant with her usual entourage of assistants and security guards, but her expression today was more serious than usual. "Good morning," she said as she sat down at their table. "I have some interesting news to share with you." "Good news or bad news?" Dong-hyun asked. "That depends on your perspective," Han Myung-ja replied. "I received a message this morning from the Galactic Commerce Guild. They want to use our story as an example in their new training program." "Training program?" Soo-jin looked confused. "They are creating educational materials to teach business owners throughout the galaxy about proper customer service," Han Myung-ja explained. "Apparently our situation has caused many beings to examine how they treat their customers." Ji-won pulled out her tablet and showed them a news article. "Look at this headline. Human Values Challenge Galaxy-Wide Business Practices." The article talks about how your act of kindness has started conversations about equality and respect in dozens of different cultures. "My act of kindness?" Dong-hyun laughed. "All I did was share food with someone who looked hungry. All you did," Han Myung-ja said firmly, "was prove that humans have something special. We do not judge beings by their appearance or their bank accounts. We see people as people, regardless of what species they are or how much money they have." She gestured around the busy restaurant. "Look at your customers today. I see Zentari and Corvin eating at the same table, sharing stories and laughing together. I see a Vex diplomat having lunch with an Altarian trader, and they are not talking about business, they are talking about their children." Dong-hyun looked around and realized she was right. His restaurant had become more than just a place to eat. It was becoming a place where different species came together as equals. "There is something else," Han Myung-ja continued. "The guild wants to offer you a position as an advisor for their new Equality and Commerce initiative. You would travel to different worlds and space stations helping other business owners learn how to treat all customers with respect." "Me?" Dong-hyun felt overwhelmed again. "But I am just a cook. I do not know anything about teaching or consulting." "You know the most important thing," Han Myung-ja smiled. "You know how to see the person inside every being, regardless of what they look like or where they come from." Before Dong-hyun could respond, a commotion near the restaurant entrance caught their attention. A small crowd had gathered outside and voices were rising in what sounded like an argument. Through the glass, they could see Veltar standing in the corridor. The once proud Zentari merchant looked terrible. His expensive robes were wrinkled and stained. His forearms hung limp at his sides. He was talking to anyone who would listen, but most beings were walking past him without stopping. "He has been out there for an hour," Soo-jin said quietly. "I think he is trying to apologize to people, but no one wants to hear it." Dong-hyun watched the desperate alien for a moment, then stood up. "Excuse me," he said. "I need to do something." He walked out of the restaurant and approached Veltar. The Zentari looked up with surprised eyes when he saw who was coming toward him. "Dong-hyun," Veltar said in a broken voice. I have been wanting to speak with you." "Then speak," Dong-hyun said simply. "I know I have no right to ask for anything," Veltar began, his voice shaking. "But I wanted to tell you that I was wrong. I was wrong about you, wrong about the old woman, wrong about everything." "I know you were wrong," Dong-hyun replied. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I do not know," Veltar admitted. "My business is ruined. My reputation is destroyed. No one will hire me or work with me. I have lost everything." Dong-hyun studied the alien's face and saw genuine regret there. "Are you sorry because you got caught, or are you sorry because you hurt people?" "I am sorry because I hurt people," Veltar said immediately. "I have been thinking about that old woman every day since this happened. I made her feel small and worthless, and that was cruel. I am sorry because I treated her badly when I should have treated her with respect. Her name is Han Myung-ja," Dong-hyun said, "and she is sitting in my restaurant right now. If you really want to apologize, you should apologize to her." Veltar's eyes grew wide with fear. "She would never want to see me. Not after what I did." "Maybe not," Dong-hyun agreed. "But if you are truly sorry, you should try anyway." Dong-hyun walked back into the restaurant, leaving Veltar standing alone in the corridor. A few minutes later, the Zentari appeared at the restaurant entrance. He stood there for a long time, gathering courage before finally pushing open the door. The entire restaurant fell silent as Veltar walked slowly toward Han Myung-ja's table. His forearms were trembling and his usually proud posture was bent with shame. "Mrs. Han Myung-ja," he said in a voice barely above a whisper, "I have come to apologize. I treated you with disrespect and cruelty. I judged you by your appearance instead of seeing you as a person deserving of dignity. I am deeply, truly sorry." Han Myung-ja looked at him for a long moment without speaking. Finally, she gestured to an empty chair at the table. "Sit down, Veltar." "I do not deserve to sit with you," Veltar replied. "Sit down anyway," she said firmly. As the humbled merchant sat down, Han Myung-ja continued, "Apologies are meaningless unless they lead to change. If you are truly sorry, prove it by changing how you treat others." "I want to change," Veltar said desperately, "but I do not know how. I have lost everything. No one will trust me again." Han Myung-ja looked at Dong-hyun, who nodded slightly. "Then you will work here," she said. "Dong-hyun needs help serving customers from different species. You know many alien languages and customs. You can help bridge the gap between humans and other beings." "Work here?" Veltar looked shocked. "But why would you help me after what I did?" "Because," Dong-hyun said,